The rain was growing heavier. On the desolate highway at midnight, the streetlights cast a dim, yellowish glow, but the car's headlights struggled to pierce through the thick fog. I kept my eyes on the navigation screen. What had once been a familiar route now felt utterly foreign. The GPS signal flickered in and out, as if this stretch of road had somehow vanished from reality. My fuel gauge was running low, and the nearest town was still several kilometers away. Just as I debated whether to keep driving, a faint silhouette emerged on the roadside, a building. An old wooden sign hung precariously, its weathered letters barely legible, "Hotel." This place wasn't on my map. But on a night like this, it was my only option. Pulling into the muddy parking lot, the tires crunched over loose gravel, the sound grating against the silence. I turned off the engine and stepped out. The world was deathly still, save for the relentless patter of rain on the eaves. The entrance to the hotel was slightly ajar, a dim, yellow light spilling into the damp night air. Yet, beneath the faint warmth, the scent of mold and old wood clung thickly. I made my way to the front desk. Behind the counter sat a man in a faded uniform, flipping through a worn, yellowed registry book. His movements were slow and mechanical, like a puppet left to decay. I tapped the counter. The man lifted his head. His expression was vacant, his eyes dull, as if he had been staring at nothing for years. Without a word, he slid a tarnished room key across the desk. The number on the key tag read 405. The hallway was long and narrow, its old carpeting muffling my footsteps. The dim wall sconces flickered as if they might go out at any moment. As I dragged my suitcase forward, my fingers brushed against the doorknob of my assigned room. And then, my gaze caught on the number plate. Room 405. But beneath the brass numbers, something else was faintly visible, another set of digits that had been crudely scratched away, 404. Someone had tried to erase it. Yet, despite their efforts, the numbers remained, barely discernible, as though desperately fighting to be seen. Some of the scratches were deliberate, human-made. Others looked like they had been carved out by fingernails. A cold unease crept up my spine. The rain continued to lash against the windows, and a draft slithered through the aged wooden frame, bringing with it a damp chill. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The smell of mildew hit me instantly. The room was ordinary. Or rather, too ordinary. The furniture sat stiffly in the corners, coated in dust. A landscape painting hung askew on the wall, its colors dulled beneath the grime. The bed, though neatly made, looked used, as if someone had just been lying there. Closing the door behind me, I placed my suitcase by the bed and sank down onto the mattress. The rain outside seemed distant now, leaving only the sound of my own breathing in the stillness. Then, just as I began to relax, I heard it. At first, it was barely more than a murmur, like the whisper of wind slipping through a door crack. But the sound grew clearer. It wasn't the wind. It was whispering. The hushed voice was close, right at my ear, its words too fragmented to understand, yet laced with something raw, something pleading. My eyes snapped open. I sat up abruptly, scanning the room. Shadows pooled in the corners, the curtain shifting slightly as if disturbed by an unseen presence. I held my breath, listening intently. The sound wasn't coming from the wind. It wasn't the old building creaking. It was a voice. And it was coming from somewhere. The corner? Behind the curtain? Or under the bed? I hesitated, then reached out and switched on the bedside lamp. The light flooded the room, banishing the darkness. Nothing. Only the lingering dampness in the air, a subtle, almost imperceptible chill, as if something had just left. I exhaled slowly, telling myself it was just exhaustion, that my mind was playing tricks on me. Lying back down, I let my eyelids grow heavy once more. And then, the whisper returned. Closer this time. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, dispelling some of the lingering darkness from the night before. But the unease remained. The whispers from last night felt trapped between dream and reality, circling in the depths of my mind, refusing to fade. I stepped out of the room and made my way down the hallway toward the front desk. The hotel's lighting, though brighter than at night, carried a sterile, washed-out quality. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each movement of the hands deliberate and heavy. The air was still thick, unmoving. Clearing my throat, I asked the front desk clerk, "The number plate on room 405 has been scratched. It looks like it used to say 404. Do you know anything about that?" The man's expression remained unchanged. He barely spared me a glance before responding in an eerily flat voice. "Sir, our hotel has no room 404. I frowned. "But I saw it last night. There has never been such a room." He cut me off before I could finish. His gaze was devoid of anything, no curiosity, no concern. Just emptiness. I hesitated. The air around me felt colder somehow. I searched his face for any hint of a reaction, but he remained perfectly still, like a wax figure frozen in time. A suffocating pressure settled over the hotel. I turned away, deciding to find another guest to talk to. As I passed by the dining area, I overheard a hushed conversation. "He stayed there," a hoarse voice whispered. "My God, another one," someone else murmured, their tone barely above a breath. They spoke in hushed, clipped voices, as if afraid of being overheard. I furrowed my brow and took a step closer. But the moment they noticed me, they fell silent. Then, without a word, they stood up and hurried out of the room, leaving behind half-eaten plates of breakfast. A sharp pulse of anxiety shot through my chest. My stomach twisted with a growing nausea, a sick sense of wrongness pressing down on me. I turned abruptly, my eyes drawn toward the hallway leading deeper into the hotel. The corridor was dim, its walls lined with closed doors. All except for mine. My door stood out like a scar, the scratched numbers glaring back at me. 404. It was waiting. Or perhaps, it was waiting for me. I couldn't sleep anymore. Ever since that night of whispers, my nerves had been stretched taut. Everything in this room seemed to silently remind me something was wrong. The indifferent hotel staff, the hushed conversations of the other guests, the deep scratches on the door, each was a crack in the facade, hinting at the truth lurking in the darkness. I wanted to leave. Dragging my suitcase behind me, I made my way to the front entrance, only to find it sealed shut. A heavy iron lock clamped over the door, barring any way out. I had never seen it before. Had it been there last night? I turned back toward my room. Outside, the sky had dimmed into the hues of dusk, thick clouds pressing low over the landscape. The distant forest was swallowed in dense fog. A damp, musty odor clung to the air, seeping into the very walls. The single light bulb flickered erratically, sputtering like a dying star. I reached for my phone, searching for any information on this hotel. Nothing. No listings. No records. As if this place had never existed. And worse, my own check-in record was gone. My pulse quickened, a growing dread coiling in my chest. The air in the room had dropped to an unnatural chill, the cold burrowing deep into my bones. Slowly, my gaze drifted back toward the door, room 405. But the scratched-out numbers beneath it, 404, had grown clearer, deeper, as though someone had carved into it again last night. I stepped closer, running my fingertips over the rough indentations. The metal felt ice-cold beneath my touch. Then, a whisper. Faint. Muffled. But this time, I understood. "Help me, get out." The voice came from behind the door. But that didn't make sense. There was nothing behind that door but the hallway. Wasn't there? I stumbled backward, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Forcing myself to stay calm, I turned toward the window, pressing my palms against the cold glass, inhaling deeply in an attempt to steady my thoughts. Then, A surge of icy terror shot through my spine. In the reflection, staring back at me, wasn't my face. It was something else. A face. Pale. Distorted. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, dark eyes sunken deep into hollow sockets. And its lips trembled, mouthing the same plea over and over. "Help me, get out." I spun around. Nothing. Only the door. And it was opening. Slowly. Silently. A thin sliver of darkness yawning beyond the threshold. And within that gap, there was nothing. Just an abyss. I stood frozen in place, unable to move. The darkness beyond the doorframe was not just the absence of light, it was something deeper, a void that felt bottomless, as though I were staring into the abyss, and the abyss was staring back at me. The room's light flickered violently. The painting on the wall trembled. The air thickened with the stench of decay. Beneath my feet, the floor vibrated slightly, as if the entire hotel was being manipulated by some unseen force. Then, the door wrenched open wider. An invisible force pulled me in. I struggled, but the space around me twisted, warping unnaturally. Something unseen coiled around me, dragging me into the dark. The next moment, I hit the ground hard. Silence. The room had changed. The walls were peeling, the decay eating through them like an old wound. The ceiling lights swayed violently, buzzing with the erratic crackle of static electricity. Dust and strange black particles drifted in the air, remnants of something long since burned. Everything in the room bore the weight of abandonment. In the corners, curled up blackened stains smeared the floor. Burn marks. And on the bed, there was a figure. No, not a person. Its skin was an unnatural shade of ashen gray. Its mouth hung slightly open, and its eyes, stretched wide, were nothing but gaping black voids. Its fingers had dug deep into the mattress, leaving behind jagged claw marks. It did not move. Yet I felt it watching me. On the walls, amidst the crumbling decay, something had been scratched over and over again, faint, desperate carvings, repeating the same word. 404. I held my breath and took a slow step backward. The floor beneath me cracked. A thin layer of ash crumbled beneath my heel, revealing something darker, something deeper. The walls began to seep with a thick, black liquid. The corpse on the bed twitched. Its mouth moved, just barely. A whisper. "You, take my place." My blood turned to ice. What did it mean? I turned to run. But the door was gone. In its place stood a mirror, old and rusted around the edges. I looked into it. And the reflection staring back wasn't me. It wore my clothes. It had my features. But its eyes were hollow, its face drained of color. And it smiled. A slow, unnatural curl of the lips. The other me raised a hand. I didn't move. But the reflection did. It pressed its palm against the mirror's surface. And the glass rippled. It stepped forward. Crossing the threshold. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. The reflection leaned in, its face inches from mine, its breath cold against my ear. A whisper. "Welcome back." My eyes snapped open. I was standing at the hotel's front desk. The room was silent. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of the old clock. A damp, musty smell filled the air. I looked down at my hands. Ash clung to my fingers. Dried blood stained my skin. And in my palm, a rusted key. The number etched onto it was clear. 4. Oh. 4.